Why is it that it feels like all of us are struggling with keeping our homes in working order and feeling streamlined and pleasant to be in? Why is there so much content on the internet about how to clean your home, how to tidy, how to keep things in their place? Maybe it's just my algorithm, but I'm constantly bombarded with this content. And don't get me wrong, I'm part of it. I mean, I talk about those topics on this channel a lot. But my point is, clearly there is an issue here that, at least here in the US, the average family struggles with keeping their homes in order, and it can feel overwhelming and stressful and lead to a lot of unhappiness. But there is a strategy for approaching the home problem that I think will solve a lot of that strife and stress and actually make your home a more pleasant place to be in. Now you may think, is this too good to be true? And is she about to try to sell me some kind of product? No. This strategy is something you can do on your own through a little bit of thinking, creative problem solving, and soul searching. But once you get in the groove with this, you'll see a difference and, I believe, experience a better home. The simple strategy is lower your standards. Practice being mediocre. Now, what does that mean? You might be confused. The higher standards we create, the perfectionism we strive for, stops us in our tracks. It keeps us from starting to attack the problem, and so we just stay stuck where we are. It leads to overspending and overpurchasing, trying to create a perfect life that is impossible to create, and it makes us feel less satisfied with our homes and what we already have. When I buy something new, whether it's a piece of clothing or some kind of item for my home or kitchen or something, often when I'm buying it to improve upon what I already have by like 10%. And I think a lot of us are like this, where we buy a new pair of jeans or a new shirt or a new type of spatula. We technically already have all those things, but we're just trying to make it that little bit better. We're trying to maybe stand out in a crowd or make things a little bit easier, a little bit better. When the reality is that when we buy something, we are spending that money, and all of that money lost also has an opportunity cost. Every time you're buying that new t-shirt, that new spatula, you're taking your money away from something more meaningful and impactful in your life. And you're only improving upon what you already have by this tiny amount that to other people might not be noticeable and might also not be noticeable to you once that new item becomes the new norm. And so in this case, basically what I'm saying is, try to see if you can get by with the spatula you already have, or do the jeans you have already work pretty well, or can you style them in a different way that makes those old jeans more exciting? Also, just ask yourself the question, is the new thing I'm buying actually improving that much upon my life? Because the reality is, the more we buy, the more stuff we have, the more clutter we have, the more we have to clean, take care of things, declutter things, tidy things. But if we just don't buy it in the first place, we save the money, we save the time, and overall, our homes will feel less chaotic. It's when we're trying to achieve this perfect version of ourselves that looks the best, sounds the best, has everything the best, we end up missing the mark entirely. Another example of this is perfectionism around tidying. I notice for me sometimes when I have a mess to clean up, I feel like I can't begin to tackle it until I know I have the time and energy to do it right, to do it to completion, to really have the space feel nice. But the problem is that then I never get started. And avoidance is the fuel of failure. If you don't ever attack the problem at all, then it's not gonna get solved. And honestly, a half tidied up mess is better than just the original mess. And so sometimes what I've been trying to do is, instead of saying I'm not gonna clean it up until I can do it perfectly, I just say, okay, I'm just gonna take 5 things and put them away and I'll deal with the rest later because I have a few minutes right now. Or even I will just go to that area and just pick up the literal garbage that I can throw in the trash very easily, and I'll deal with the other stuff that requires more of a cognitive load to figure out what to do with those items later. Break down this bigger challenge or tidying session into smaller pieces and make it manageable. And be okay with doing it halfway. Be okay with just tidying a little bit and not having it totally clean. Because when we expect a perfect home, we end up with a bigger mess. But the reality is, if you clean a bit it will feel better than if you didn't clean at all. And sometimes you might end up cleaning more than you even planned to. Another example is cooking. So often, for some reason, I feel like if I'm cooking, especially for somebody else, like if I'm cooking for my husband, Andy, and my daughter, often I feel like, oh, it needs to be something that when they eat it, they're like, oh, that tastes so good, and ooh, you really put effort and love into this dish. But the reality is, sometimes that keeps me from cooking. Sometimes, because I feel like I need to make a really delicious, well thought out meal, we end up ordering in because I don't want to have to deal with that chaos. But instead, if I could accept, okay, occasionally we'll have a spaghetti night, or occasionally we'll just have something super straightforward and simple. That will actually save us money in the long run, and quite often my family members might not even really notice that much of a difference. Maybe they do, maybe it's not quite as delicious, but it saves us money. And again, that money can go toward other opportunities, and it also saves me effort and time. If I can cook a meal and have it be pretty simple, do something with one pan, or keep the salad on the side really simple and just like greens with some kind of pre-made dressing rather than having to cut up all these different vegetables, it just means I'm more likely to cook in, and I don't have to put as much effort into cooking when I do cook. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy cooking. Sometimes I'll want to cook a complicated, well thought out meal, but I don't have to do that all the time, especially when I'm overwhelmed. So again, it's like I need to practice sometimes doing things halfway, doing things not as well, and being okay with that. Another example, responding to emails, responding to texts. Just yesterday, I got this really nice long message from a friend that was super thoughtful, really kind. I just didn't respond right away. I was too overwhelmed to give a reply that was super thought out and kind in return. And so I just kind of avoided it for a little while. And then I realized, wait, Aylin, it's rude to not even respond at all because they're left hanging. You know what I mean? I still have to give like the more full thought out response, but I just sent a short text being like, hey, that was such a thoughtful message. That meant so much. Thanks for being so kind. I'm in the middle of a few things. It's a hectic week, so I want to give you a full response later, but thanks so much for this message. It meant a lot. Saying something quick that I don't have to put much thought into, it gets me halfway there, and then later at some point when I have more time, I can respond more fully. But I would rather half respond and like acknowledge it than just avoid it altogether, because that's more hurtful. Then they're like, did she get the message? Should I say something? Did she not appreciate it? I think this is a challenge a lot of us face, responding to all the things we constantly have to respond to. It's the age of social media and messaging and email and all of that. But I think it's worth remembering it's okay to just like haphazardly respond and not respond fully, and just do it halfway rather than all the way. It's when we need to do all the way that we end up not responding at all. So that's the overall idea. For those tasks that we struggle with the most in life, ask yourself, could part of the problem be my own perfectionism, or this kind of all or nothing thinking, I need to do it right or I can't do it at all? I think that is a problem a lot of people have, maybe even especially women. And so I just wanted to put that out there on my channel, since a lot of my viewers are women, and I probably would estimate that a lot of them are people that really care about doing things right and like fixing their homes up right, because I do a lot of home content. But I also think this concept can apply to a lot of different areas of your life. Whatever that area is that you're struggling the most with, see if you can practice doing things halfway or doing things in a mediocre way. And the reason why I'm recommending this isn't just some random idea that I came up with one day. It actually is reflected in treatment that people often give for anxiety. I used to be a therapist. I got my PhD in clinical psychology, and part of what I studied was anxiety. And what's interesting is that treatments for anxiety are some of the most effective treatments for mental health disorders. And what seems to be most helpful for these people is exposure therapy. You've probably heard of it. It's this concept of, say you have a horrible fear of snakes that keeps you from, leaving your house or keeps you from going outside much. You gradually expose yourself to that thing that you're afraid of. Maybe you start by looking at pictures of snakes, then you maybe watch videos, maybe then you go to the zoo and face that fear and feel the anxiety. Notice that you can handle the anxiety, that you can live through it, and that maybe you don't have to be quite so afraid. You face your fears and live with that anxiety and see that maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. And I think back to times where I had patients, I won't get into specifics to keep, anonymity, but like I had patients who had, for example, social anxiety, where they were just totally overwhelmed with the idea of making a mistake in conversation, of offending someone, of looking silly or stupid in some way. And so we would build exposures collaboratively to target those fears, where they would lean into those fears. They would do things like make a mistake in an email. Or sometimes during therapy sessions, we would go out into public on the streets of the city and have them walk up to random people and say something awkward, just to get used to the idea of, it's okay if I look a little silly sometimes. I can survive through that. And so those types of exposures actually help people be more capable of facing their fears and conquering them and doing the thing that they're avoiding. And so often when it comes to our homes or whatever it is we're struggling with, it's because of the avoidance, because we feel like we're not good enough, because we need to do things right. And so I actually think we can take a page out of the exposure therapy playbook and do little mini exposures. Actually practice doing things halfway. Practice engaging behaviorally with things, at least taking some kind of action and sitting with the discomfort of not doing things perfectly or fully. That is a superpower. Once you get good at that, I do think that we're way more empowered to make mistakes, but live more and learn from those mistakes. Like I said before, avoidance is the fuel of failure. And I'm talking real failure, because little failures where you mess up along the way and you learn something, that's not a real failure, because failure is actually a place to thrive and learn. But avoidance is where you actually fail, where you actually just never get around to doing the thing that you want to do. So I'd encourage you, whether it's about your home, tidying up, organizing, or whether it's something about your personal life or your other goals in life or other things that you're struggling with, really question, am I being perfectionistic? Are my standards so high that I cannot even begin to try to reach them? And try to address it head on by doing things halfway. And I just want to add one more thing. If you're thinking, well, I'm such a failure at these things that I'm failing on, it certainly isn't perfectionism. Well, let me tell you, that might actually be a sign of perfectionism, because I used to always tell myself I was not in any way a perfectionist, because sometimes I would fail at things so badly. Like I would have such a messy room that it was like, clearly I'm by definition not a perfectionist, because perfectionists, they need to have everything perfect. But that is a lie. The reality is perfectionists are often these avoidance people, where it's like all or nothing. They are perfect at something, they do it really well, or they just don't do it at all, and they realistically kind of do fail. Again, failure is okay, but my point is, just because you don't feel like you're doing it perfectly, or you don't feel like you're holding yourself to a high standard because you're not meeting that standard, does not mean that you're not still trying to hold yourself to that standard. So I just want to add that too, to make sure that if you're not identifying with this, but you are experiencing it, that you can make that connection in your head. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It is a great way to get the video out to more people and to also support this channel. So if you take a moment to like this video, I'd really, really appreciate it. And you can also subscribe below to see more videos like this. Thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.